bienvenidos a Mochilazo. Yo soy Luis.
Y yo soy Gaby.
Y estamos en Lexington, Kentucky para visitar la destilería Town Branch. Es una destilería de bourbon whisky y también tiene una cervecería. Ellos son los de los pocos que hacen pues un destilado que es el bourbon y que hacen cerveza también bajo la misma marca, Alltech.
Recuerden que cuando vinimos a hacer el Distillery District aquí en Lexington, la destilería estaba cerrada por COVID, pero volvimos y aquí se lo estamos mostrando. Espero que les guste.
Vamos a recorrerlo el tour. Aquí está la página abajo para que hagan sus reservaciones siempre con tiempo porque están muy cotizados ellos y se van a encontrar pues tal vez con un fin de semana que vengan de visita a Kentucky puede estar lleno, entonces háganlo con anticipación, tal vez 2 o 3 semanas antes, hagan su reservación y vienen pues ya seguros de que la van a poder tomar. De aquí se pueden ir a Kinland. ¿Recuerdan el video que hicimos sobre Kinland, los caballos? Pueden venir aquí primero, dar el tour con ellos en la mañana a las 11 y de aquí se van a las carreras en Kinland.
Escuché a alguien mencionar que si no alcanzan tours, por el momento están ofreciendo tastings, so mínimo pueden probar.
Y no se quedan con las ganas. Existe algo llamado el Bourbon Trail en Kentucky, que es una ruta para recorrer todas las destilerías de bourbon. Pueden encontrar un pasaporte que contiene todas ellas y lo pueden estampar. Cuando juntan todas las estampas de todas las destilerías que han recorrido, lo pueden enviar a la dirección que aparece en el pasaporte y recibirán un regalo de ellos por haber completado el Bourbon Trail. Si no han visto el video del bourbon, vayan primero a verlo para que vean de qué estamos hablando.
Welcome to Alltech's Lexington Brewing Distilling Co. My name is Tom. I'm going to be your beer buddy and your spiritual advisor. And if I have your permission, I will take my mask off so you can hear me better and I can breathe. Or if after I take my mask off you don't like it, I'll put it back on. It's all up to you. Because you are in a pretty wonderful place, a lot of passion and pride goes into this. We all enjoy working here because we're in a place that makes beer and bourbon. But this is the passion of our founder, Dr. Pearse Irish. He is a 5th generation distiller, barrel maker, cooper, as they know him in the old country, and he was also a brewer. So he has a lot of experience in his family, and it's what he's always wanted to do in his life. So he got his educational start outside of Dublin, Ireland. He went and got an undergraduate degree in biochemistry. He got his master's degree in brewing and distilling, and had I known that in college, I would have switched majors. But I don't think they offer it here in the States. So he also got his doctorate in yeast fermentation, and he put all that to good use. He interned at Guinness, and he also interned at Jameson. You may have heard of those 2 little places. After he got all that experience, he was in business over there, and then he got called from the ethanol manufacturers here in the States to help them back in 1976 with production problems they had in making ethanol during the gas crisis way back then. Us older people might remember that time. He comes here, loves Lexington, Kentucky area, and when his assignment is over, decides he wants to stay. So he needs something to do, and he has an idea in the back of his mind, so he gets a $10,000 loan, and he starts Alltech in his garage. And it's an animal feed and nutritional supplement company. Business is very good. He pays off his loan in 2 months. He makes his first $1 million at the end of the year, and he made his first $1 million in 10 years. So he did pretty good for himself. Also wanted to follow his dad's footsteps. So he came to the old Lexington Brewing and Distilling Company, and these are some old pictures from the 20s and 30s. The building that we bought was across the street, but Mark came over here and asked for an internship. And they said, well, we would love to help you. However, we are closing our doors. Can't do it. He goes back to Dad and says, Dad, they can't help me. Dad comes down, has a couple of drinks with the brewers here, and whips out his checkbook, and he bought the brewery. That is a true story. That happened in 1999. So that's how we got back into the brewing business. A few years later, they decide, well, you know, brewing and distilling is pretty close in operations. Let's start a distillery. So they built the distillery building we're going to go to later on. They started that in 2006. They laid down the first bourbon in 2008. and we joined the Bourbon Trail in 2012. Any questions before we're going to head on over to the brewery? That will be our first part. Before we leave here, does everyone have their 4 sample coupons? If you don't have those, you're in big trouble, because you don't get anything when we get over there.
Can I have an extra one?
No. Good question, but no. Job as a tour guide, we are hiring. Use you. So the old building has a lot of problems. The bottling line here was problematic. It used to spew beer all over the place, which is okay if you needed a drink. However, you came out awfully wet. So they decided, well, they wanted to make this building look as good as our distillery building. That is actually older than this building. So they said, well, how are we going to do this without interrupting production? They came up with a rather clever idea. They built the building around it. It's going to be behind that wall where you see the 3 silos. That is our warehouse building, Angliana Avenue. It's also our bottling and canning facility. And where we store the bourbon barrel ale to age in those beautiful bourbon barrels. There is a refrigerator about the size of about 3 football fields, and we can hold about 6,000 barrels of beer at any given time, aging. Whether we're talking about beer or bourbon, because everything starts with grain. Grains are put into a big giant super sack, which you see down there, and brought over here. And they're going to be brewed up for a beer, and they're going to be put through the process for a spirit. If you look at that sack, you see the initials KA on that. It's going to be Kentucky Ale. That is our flagship beer. We make more of that than any other beer. However, we don't sell more of that than any other beer. Mostly what we sell is bourbon barrel ale. That is our most famous product. It is also the #1 selling craft beer here in Kentucky. So they take the grain, you see the hops are in the bucket on top there. The grain is going to be lifted up onto that device there. They're going to empty the grain. It's going to come by a conveyor belt. It's going to go into that first silver steel device there. It is known as the mash tun. In there, it's going to start converting that grain into sugars. From the mash tun, it's going to go into the next container that is known as the lauter tun. In the lauter tun, it's kind of like a small whirlpool device. It's going to send the grains down to the bottom. It's going to take that sugary water known as wort, and it's going to move it down to the next one called the brew kettle. In the brew kettle, we're going to be adding the hops, and then we're going to send it from the brew kettle over to these fermenters. In the fermenters, that is where we're going to add the yeast. And the yeast is going to start converting those sugars into the alcohol, which we know and love so much. Now, once it is finished in these fermenters, 5 to 7 days later, a big tanker truck is going to come over here. They're going to put the beer into the tanker truck. Tanker truck takes it over to Angliana, and then it's either put into bottles or cans, depending upon what's needed at the time. If it's spirits, the spirits that we're going to distill later on, we're going to take that distiller's beer. It's going to go via pipe over to the distillery, and it's going to ferment over there, and we'll talk more about that later.
How you become a master distiller? It's just with the years working in the distillery?
A lot of time. You basically start off with your education, then you're going to intern with a company, and then they're going to put you up kind of like through experience. And then it's just a question of, your knowledge and whether or not there's job openings. There's not a lot of job openings for master distillers.
Pretty sure.
Now, generally it's quiet right now, but this facility does operate 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. They are always making something. All right, well, welcome to Pearse's Place. One of the best things about working for Alltech is every building that we own has a bar. When you went over to the visitor center and you got your tickets, where did you check in at? The bar over there. Some of you got a beer. You're in a bar now. The family's private hall across the way there is also a really nice looking bar. At our corporate headquarters, which is in Nicholasville, Canton Hill Road, for those of you who are local, There is the best looking bar I have ever seen when I did my employee in processing. Dr. Lyons was a firm believer that every day should start with a beer. Every day should end with a beer. Every business meeting should start with a beer or end with a beer. Conclude the deal, have a beer. If it's a bad day, have a beer. If you are any day ending in Y, you should have a beer. So I'm all for that. I'm a firm believer in what he believes in. Unfortunately, Dr. Lyons, for those of you who may have heard, he passed away a few years ago. His son Mark now runs the business. Got that good education. And he is our chief executive officer, and we are still family owned to this day. So we like that. So now let's talk about the most important stuff. What products do you have to try? We are going to look at, let's see what's still on tap. We're going to talk about our flagship beer. When I was here first, they used to call this Kentucky Ale. A lot of people really didn't understand the beer very much, so they rebranded it as Kentucky Irish Red. And that's basically what it is. It's an Irish red ale combined with an English pale ale, and it gives us a really great tasting beer. This is my #1 choice for dinner because it pairs well with just about anything you can think of eating. It is also a great beer to have after you mow the lawn. You know, whatever you decide that you want to do. I don't recommend drinking the beer as you're mowing the lawn. I'm not going to tell you you can't either. It is a great beer. It is 5.3% in alcohol, but just those great flavors. Now we take this great tasting beer and we put it in those bourbon barrels that we talked about, and you get our #1 selling beer, the Bourbon Barrel Ale, #1 craft beer in Kentucky. And it goes from that 5.3% alcohol to 8.2% alcohol. Yes, that devil's cut that's in the barrel gets into the beer, which is why we can only sell it in 4-packs. As a tour guide friend of mine says, it is 1 beer, 2 beer, 3 beer, 4 beer. You know, it's a lot of alcohol. Trust me, you've had about 3 or 4 of these, you will feel it, but you'll feel no pain either. We also have our strawberry. Now we do a lot of seasonal beers. For those of you who like pumpkin ale, we do that in the fall. We do Christmas porters, just whatever is in the mood of the master brewer. But our current seasonal is our strawberry ale. This is also aged in a bourbon barrel, but because by the time the strawberry ale gets in there, it's been used 3 or 4 times, so you're not getting as much alcohol. This is about a 5.5% in alcohol. This is our answer to a Blue Moon. So it is a white ale. It is made with orange peel and coriander, so you get some really nice flavors. I call it kind of a light beer. It's not really light in calories, but it's lighter on the scale of our bourbon barrel ale. So that's my version of a light ale. I don't believe it's light beers. All right, for those of you who like IPAs, how many? Oh, I got a few, okay. It's a love-hate relationship with IPAs. You either love them or hate them. There is no in-between, we have found. This is our version of an IPA. We call it Aloha because it has got some pineapple and mango in it. If you want one of these and we pour it, you'll do that sniffing and you'll get those nice fruity tropical aromas for it. All right, that is your choices. Now, a little explanation of your tickets. I just went through 5 beers. You have 4 tickets. I haven't even begun to talk to you about the spirits. There are 4 spirits for you to try over there. So do the math. That's 9. You have 4. Yeah, it gets real difficult. Now, as the old Pepsi commercial used to say, you must choose wisely. This is your choice. I can't tell you what to do. You can do all beers if you like all beers. You can do all spirits if you want to wait over there. Trouble is, a lot of people get over here, they start drinking all the beers, and they get over there and they have no more tickets left. Can't help you at that point. What I can tell you is that there is no coupon sharing. In other words, you can't give your coupons to your friend next door. But if you get the Bourbon Barrel Ale and you get the vanilla or the strawberry, if you want to switch, we can't stop you from doing that. So that's one way to do that, or kind of get around it.
Still retains a lot of the color.
All right, stronger. And if you change your mind, we can always come back to it.
Estamos probando la Blue Moon estilo Alltech Brewery. Está buena.
Está buena.
Viajeros, ya pusimos aquí nuestro recuerdo de que venimos de México.
Does anybody know how IPAs were developed?
I do.
You do? Who was first? I think the gentleman here was first.
Transportation from the UK to India for the East India Trading Company because beers were going bad, like stouts and others were going bad before arrival.
Absolutely. Barrels come after they've aged in a rick house, and for those of you who are not familiar, the rick house is those big wooden structures that you see around Kentucky aging the bourbon. And you can usually tell what they are because of the black mold growing on the side of them. That's from the angel share as it escapes the barrel. So if you're looking at the side of these barrels, that is mold, not dirt, growing on the side there from that angel share escaping. It's got sugar in there. Mold loves sugar. It's going to attract there. It doesn't get into your bourbon, but it does kind of sit on the edge of the barrel. If you want to buy one of these later on, you can just take a spray hose and clean them all off. But that's what people ask about. They say, why are they so dirty? It's mold. But they're brought here. If we are doing our regular bourbon, we're going to get about 20 or 30 barrels, and we're going to put them on that table, and we're going to dump the contents in there. Our bourbon is a blended bourbon. After it is put through the dumping table, it is going to go to the bulk spirit tank. From there, it is going to go to the proofing tank. When it comes out of the barrel, it can be pretty strong, 120, 125 proof. We don't bottle at 125 proof for our normal bourbon. We're going to add demineralized water that has been limestone filtered, which is why Kentucky is made for bourbon, and it's going to bring down the proof to about 90. That is what we will bottle it at. Now, we used to hand bottle all our bourbons in here. Those 6 spigots that you see over there, that was our high-tech bottling line. We have since grown a little bit bigger when we first started. We now send our spirits to a bulk packager, Bluegrass bottling. They take care of that. But they do bring it back here, and we do hand labels still. Once it is finished in the proofing tank, it goes to the stabilization, and it used to go into the bottling tank to be bottled. Yes, sir.
So you use some of your barrels again for beer.
Yes.
How many times can one of the barrels be used like the most? Like for bourbon?
If you're talking about bourbon, it can only be used once for bourbon. We can use it again for beer. We can use it for our rum. We can use it for the vanilla barrel.
So how many times would one barrel be used like for 2 beers?
For us, we might use it 4 times.
Okay. And then you destroy the barrels or sell them?
Oh, no. That's a huge cash maker right there. Everybody wants used bourbon barrels. Wineries want them. We sell in bulk to Jameson's in Ireland. We sell it to Scotch distillers. Everyone wants bourbon barrels. So there's a great winery, if you haven't tried, Talon, down the road, not too far. They have some of our barrels there as well.
Will they use one and use 4 times?
Yeah, there's no problem with it. They might clean it out a little bit, but yeah, you can reuse it.
How much do they go?
It depends upon condition. I've seen them go as little as 50, and I've seen them go as much as 100, 100 and a half. We don't have a rick house here in Lexington. That question comes up a lot of times. Reason being, the fire marshal in town had a little bit of heartburn with us discussing the fact that we wanted to bring a big wooden building with thousands and thousands of gallons of highly flammable liquid. If you have not seen the pictures, go onto YouTube, look at the Jim Beam fire a few years back, it's a very hard fire to put out. Usually fire departments just pull back and wait for it to die out on its own. So fire marshal said, yeah, over his dead body that he'd allow us to have a rick house here. So that's why we don't. All right, if you're ready, we're going to go over here. Cypress is a great wood. It'll last you forever as long as it is kept moist, which is why we have water in it now, because we're not actually fermenting. The other nice thing about cypress is it's a neutral wood. It does not impart any flavor or color, and we don't want that at this point. So that distiller's beer has that sugars in there. What we're going to do is add our proprietary yeast inside there. What does yeast love? Sugar. Again, it is going to give off two byproducts as it's devouring that sugar. The first and most important, the one we want to keep, is alcohol, because we like alcohol a lot. The other byproduct it gives off is carbon dioxide. Now, we don't really want that or need it at this point, so that carbon dioxide is just going to bubble up and go into the atmosphere. If we were actually fermenting, you could put your hand over this and you'd feel that intense heat from the carbon dioxide. It's a pretty neat thing. We've actually come in here and seen this thing all foaming over the floor because it's so active. Once it is finished in there, and it is anywhere from 48 hours to slightly more, it is going to finish fermenting. It's going to go by pipe underground, and it's going to go to these copper pot stills. Again, the old traditional method. These are copper pot stills Dr. Lyons bought from Scotland because he likes that copper double distillation method. So the very first one it goes to is this one on our right. That is known as the wash still. In that wash still, they're going to boil that liquid. As it is boiling, it is going to produce alcohol vapors. The vapors will then go up the lin arm and down the column. In that column, it is cooled, and it goes back into its liquid state. In that liquid state, you're going to have about somewhere between 10 to 20 proof, not high enough to put in a barrel to age. So we're going to transfer it over to the next still. In that next still, known as the spirit still, we're going to do the same process, but it's going to boost the amount of alcohol. We're doing a little less volume now, and it is going to go up to about 150 around that area, and it is now going to come and down that column. It's going to be converting back to its liquid form, and it's going to show up here in this copper box known as a spirit safe. Now that's pretty old-fashioned. We really don't have to have that there, but the spirit safe is put there by the revenuers to make sure that distillers weren't siphoning off a bit of their spirit and selling it before the tax dollars. Tax is very important when you start considering alcohol. The federal government takes a huge chunk. Most of what you're paying in a bottle is tax, not what we have to do in production run. The first tax on alcohol was back, not the whiskey tax in George Washington, but the first one that stayed permanent was during the Civil War. The government taxed liquor to pay for the war effort, and they never ever repealed it, and I doubt they ever will. When it's going to spirit safe, you see what looks like a thermometer. That is known as a hydrometer. That is how the distillers know to make their cuts. There are three cuts in making a distilled spirit. You are going to have the the head, the heart, and the tail. Now, the heads are pretty dangerous stuff if you don't know what you're doing. Anyone ever hear of a moonshiner going blind because they drank their product? It's because they drank off the heads cut. Basically, heads is what we use to make hand sanitizer with. You don't want to drink it. So that's why we don't use it. And again, it's because of the temperature that they know where to make these cuts. Then you're going to have the head. The head is that great product that you want that we'll eventually bottle. That's going to go into a separate tank and it will go next door. Then you have the tails. Now tails has got some bad byproducts and some good byproducts, not necessarily that you want to get rid of, so we actually use the tails as a starter in our next batch. And we'll keep running it through, eventually it'll become a bourbon. Now, it says hearts. What I wanted to point out was this is what comes off the still. You can know it as moonshine, white dog, whatever you want to call it. This is not the real stuff that you want to drink, unless you really like drinking that. It's okay with me. But what you're going to do is you're going to put it in this charred oak barrel. And after 6 months to a year, notice it goes from that clear liquid you start to get a nice caramel color. After 4 years, you're going to have an even richer, darker color and a better flavor. Now, how did this come about? And this is my other question that's not for another gift, but just how did aged barrels come along? I'll have one for another present later on. Anyone know how we got aged barrels? Our charcoal? Anyone here heard the story of Elijah Craig? Okay, well, Elijah Craig, they named a bourbon out of him. They also believe, some folks, that this guy who lived near Pearse, Kentucky, he was a reverend as well as a distiller, because everyone distilled back then. Nobody transported corn to market. It was easier to transport it as a liquid. So you distill it into your corn liquor. He put it into barrels and sent it off to market. Now, he had a barn fire, and a lot of his barrels were in there, and never wanted to let something go to waste because some of the barrels were still good. He took that white dog, put it in this charred oak barrel, sent it off to market, and they came back and said, boy, my God, this stuff is great. It's got color, it's got flavor. What did you do? And the next thing you know, everyone's charring the inside of their oak barrel, and you're getting this wonderful thing we call bourbon today. A lot of historians tell you that story is so full of whatever that it's not true. I like it because it's just an interesting story. Now, what they do tell you is that barrels were used for everything. You would transport salted meat in them, you might transport fish in them, you transport your spirits in them. Nobody that I know of is going to transport their spirit in a barrel that just held fish. I wouldn't. There's no way you're going to drink that later on. So what did you do with the barrel after it had that use? You burnt the inside of it out. Next thing you know, again, the color and flavor. And that's how bourbon barrels came about being charred. So if you ever go to a barrel company or cooperage, you'll see them burning the inside of these out, and depending upon what color and flavors that you want, you'll ask for either a 1 to 4 charge, 4 being the highest one. It's called alligatoring. You see it cracking. And if you look on the side of the stave here, that line is the furthest extent of the bourbon going into the barrel as it's in the rickhouse. Those rickhouses are not heated, they're not cooled, so you get that temperature diversion, making the spirit go in and out of the barrels. And that's what's giving it its flavor and color. Any questions on that process? Again, people say 4-year, 5-year, 7-year, 12-year, it's up to the distiller. But if you're going to market a 12-year spirit, it has to be in the barrel for at least 12 years. Laws on bourbon. Anyone know what the laws on bourbon are? Haven't been to enough distilleries yet. 50, at least minimum 51% corn. It can be higher. Has to be made in the United States. To be called a Kentucky straight bourbon, it has to be aged in the barrel for a minimum of 2 years. Again, it can be longer, but that minimum of 2 years. And the other thing is the barrel has to be aged in that virgin white oak charred barrel. All right, let's go to tasting. The United States, Scotch to Scotland, Irish whiskey to Ireland. Those of you who are champagne drinkers, in order to be called a champagne, what?
France.
Has to come from the Champagne region of France. Otherwise, it is just a sparkling wine.
Tequila.
Yeah, tequila, yeah.
It has to be made in
I don't talk about
Mexico.
tequila. I got into more trouble with that. This is our Kentucky straight bourbon. It's at least a 4-year aged bourbon. It is a 90 proof. Then the next one we have for you is going to be our rye, but I do recommend you try this last. This is 100 proof. Rye has got kind of a spicy flavor to it. Some people don't like it. It's an acquired taste. It took me a little while before I started to enjoy drinking rye. It's a great mixer though. Rye and ginger, Manhattans, old fashions, it is great for that. Then we have our single barrel. Now our single barrel, you actually have to kind of look on the bottle to see what the proof is on this because it varies from batch to batch, from barrel to barrel. Depends upon how much alcohol is in there. This one is listed at 54.3, so you double that as your proof, and that is what you're drinking in the single barrel. So,
good question.
Yes, sir.
Why the difference in color between the, well, it can be the single malt whiskey and the bourbon?
Single malt whiskeys are not aged in a bourbon barrel that's just been charred. They might age them in a barrel that's been used 10, 12, 100 times. So again, the color comes from the charring of that barrel and that one-time use. Think of it as a tea bag. The more you use a tea bag, the less flavor, less colors you're going to get. Good question, though. Okay, and finally, you will all get one of these. Our complimentary drink to you. This is our Bluegrass Sundown. Mrs. Lyons wanted a special drink created. We hosted the World Equestrian Games back in 2000. All these people were coming from over the world. She wanted a special drink. She said, make our version of an Irish coffee. So our distillers did. So they have put inside here our bourbon. We put some coffee in here, some vanilla, then we added some sugar, and then later on in the process we added some more sugar. Then just because we didn't have enough sugar in there, we put some more sugar in there. One of my tour guide friends says that if you don't like this drink after I make it for you, you don't like puppies and kittens. So, but we'll show you how to make one of those. In the meantime, we'll start from this end and move on. Again, if you want to try the rye, I recommend trying that rye after you've tried the other three. Rye is going to leave a very interesting peppery flavor on the tip of your tongue. Kind of hard to get rid of it sometimes. For those of you who want, we do have small ice cubes that you can add into your sample cup. We also have these droppers that if you want to add a drop, and I say just a drop, this is a small sample. Some people prefer to do that. They say that adding a drop into your spirit opens up the flavor for you. As you are tasting, look at the bourbon flavor wheel that the industry has put up there for you. I am telling you right now, you are not going to taste everything that's on that wheel. Mostly what you will taste are notes of vanilla, brown sugar. In the rye, you will probably taste cinnamon, but I have never tasted tobacco. How you taste tobacco in a bourbon or another spirit, I don't know, but somebody said that they do that, so it's up there for you to kind of study. Also, put the sample on the tip of your tongue, roll it back and forth. Your tongue is divided into 4 flavor categories, and that's how you taste different things. So as you're rolling it back and forth, we call that the Kentucky Chew. And if you like to shoot your spirit down, that nice warm feeling that you get from doing that, that is known as the Kentucky Hug. You do not have to use a coupon on the Sundown, that's complimentary.
I'll get 80.
And if anybody wants a single barrel, come on up.
This is a single barrel bourbon.
It's not blended with anything.
Exactly. It doesn't have like that later distillation.
Está mejor que el primero.
Vamos a tocar el rye. Recuerden que el rye es el centeno, es lo que le da ese picor al bourbon. Los que lo usan, hay bourbon que solo usan trigo en vez de rye, como Maker's Mark y otros que después vamos a visitar las destilerías. Pero este siempre le da el picocito al bourbon. Wow. No soy fan del rye, pero este está bueno.
So when you pour it out, it kind of looks like 10W40. You don't want to drink it in this state. It is just this very sweet syrup. However, it makes a great topping on vanilla ice cream. You can put it on brownies. For those of you who need a quick pick-me-up in the morning, it's great on cornflakes too. It's just an all-around versatile method to do it. Boiling water. Yes. Now remember, I just told you this is hot boiling water, so when you do get your drink, this is not a shooter, guys. If you do that, all you do is burn the back of your mouth and it comes out your nose. It's not a pretty sight. You're gonna put that in there to break up that concentrate. Now here's where the trick comes. You need an inverted spoon. You get your imported heavy whipping cream. Anyone know where we import our heavy whipping cream from? Walmart. Okay, I told you the jokes don't get too much better. Although they sound funny after a couple of drinks. Pour that heavy whipping cream. That's the second time I've do such a good job on it. what you get is something that looks like a Guinness beer. And they wanted it to look that way because they're from Ireland and he did work at Guinness. So, with that in mind, those of you who would like one of these, come on up and we will get those to you. This is the kind of thing that you can mess up. Like I did here. This is not as pretty as the other ones, but not too.
Nos encontramos al Master Distiller aquí en Tom Branch y nos firmó una botella, nos autografió una botella con dedicatoria. Viajeros, aquí se termina nuestro tour por Alltech y Tom Branch Distillery. Sigan el Mochilazo porque vamos a visitar todas las destilerías que tiene el Bourbon Trail. Esto es Kentucky, esto es lo famoso que tiene Kentucky, el bourbon. Suscríbanse, denle un like si les ha gustado y sigan el Mochilazo porque vamos a recorrer todas las destilerías de Kentucky. Viajeros, como siempre, muchas gracias por ver este video. Si no se han suscrito, suscríbanse al canal, den un like si les ha gustado y compartan con los viajeros a quienes pueda servir esta información.